Welcome to the Cycling in Alignment podcast, an examination of cycling as a practice and dialogue about the integration of sport and right relationship to your life.
Greetings and salutations, Space Monkeys. Before we begin our episode, a brief reminder that this podcast depends on support from the audience. The reason I am able to continue with this project is because of the support of patrons. If you are a member of my audience and you feel I've offered you insight or added value to your cycling journey, please consider a visit to my website, colbypierce.com, where you can make a contribution to the Cycling in Alignment podcast. You can support the show for as little as $8 for a one-time contribution, or choose to subscribe as an ongoing member. Thank you for your consideration. Here's your reminder to think critically, act intuitively, and pedal consciously. Hey, Space Monkeys. This is part 2 of my conversation with Austin Einhorn. If you listen to part 1, you'll know what it's all about. And if you didn't, then just press play and enjoy our conversation as it takes off halfway to the moon. And then you'll want to go back and listen to part 1, no doubt. There is no commandment to listen in sequential order, but it might serve you best. Do as you will. Enjoy the conversation. As always, think critically, pedal consciously, and act intuitively. Thank you very much for listening. I play this game all the time with my athletes. I started playing it years ago with me and be like, all right, I think I'm at 175 watts, down 173. Then you have the right relationship with the tool because it can inform your knowledge, but you're also intuiting the effort. That's the point. Mm-hmm. That's the point of technology, is to help you learn something about yourself or refine intuition about yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I play this game with my athletes too. Sometimes I'll have them do intervals without power. And
how do they respond when you're like, you take that away?
A lot of times they're like, I have no idea. They're terrified, or they just feel like they're stabbing in the dark, which is a real sign that we need to do more of that work.
I mean, it's if we want to go big picture here, like we can talk about focus as a skill. Mm-hmm. And with smartphones the way they are and the bazillion people with PhDs making them more and more addictive, like as an athlete, regardless of what kind of athlete, you have to spend more time training your focus being internally instead of just externally all the time.
Yep.
Especially if it comes to emotional regulation. Like what happens to somebody who's like doing it flawlessly, looking at the data, and then they just get passed. And they're like, oh my God, but I was doing it perfectly. I went according to the plan, and they have no ability to regulate their internal systems.
Anything.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the worst outcome for this for me is like Zwift or internal training platforms.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
It's just like, it goes against everything that is the essence of the sport, but also athletics, to be honest. I mean, it's gamification. It's external focus of everything. And I'm trying to coach someone to sit with more awareness of the position of their rib cage and pelvis, for example, so that they can have more even pressure of ischial tuberosities on the saddle and be a little more symmetrical and aligned. There's no greater way to take them out of this experience than to put a giant fucking full color high def screen in front of them and make them chase watts.
So let's bring it back to something you said really early on about cueing. And there's so much more information like, it has to be external cueing. It has to be external cueing, external focus for the win.
Yeah. And
like, especially in the stick and ball sports where it's like, no, you make them focus on the external thing. And I'm like, I don't know one world-class coach that doesn't use internal cueing and internal foci. You're never going to get away from that. Your external circumstances are going to change. But I also think part of the reason why internal focus, internal cues work poorly in the research is that people are very illiterate.
Yeah.
When I work with another coach or clinician who has a high degree of awareness, an internal cue seems to work just as well as an external one. So I think there's more data to be had there. But I don't know, the vessel that we're all in, this husk, is still what every athlete is trying to master to accomplish some sort of external task. And, what's becoming more Insta famous is like, oh, you're doing it for this achievement and this and that and the other. And I'm like, all these external things, like you're not doing it for the trophy. You're doing it for the emotion that comes when you win the game out, you know, and or also on the podium.
Play your best or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, whatever that is.
I just get worried with younger athletes growing up with all the technology and then going into a athletic pursuit that I think should be much more of an internal process, but it's becoming much more
externalized.
And it's like, who's running the race? You or the machine?
I agree. Yep.
Or your coach?
Yep.
Is the coach joysticking you?
Some coaches, that's what bothers me. Some coaches actually think that that's some sort of desirable end goal, is to be able to somehow have that level of control, I think, be the thing. And some athletes buy into that. And that, of course, defeats the entire purpose of athleticism. Like, the point of athleticism is to have the experience, you know? Like, if you're 100% convinced, like, people look, I had a great conversation with another coach about this a few pods ago, about how people want certainty. And that's not life, man. Like, life is uncertain. And that's why we signed up for it. That's why we signed a waiver and pinned on a number, or showed up on the court, or picked up a ball, or whatever we did, to go have the experience. There is no certainty in it. And cycling is trying. They're trying like hell. These science mind, left brain people are trying like hell to quantify everything, to desperately take out the unknown, so we can know, you know, you can make this many watts for this many minutes, so therefore you're going to be on the podium at this race. And that's all fucking bullshit, because there's still a million details that you can screw up to give yourself a rate limiting factor. Like, you can eat poorly, you can crash in a corner, you can get your rain jacket caught in your front wheel and eat shit. Like, there's a million things that can go wrong.
I mean, but Haley's bike tire popped in the Olympics. She just happened to be close to the pit lane.
Yeah.
And was able to make a heroic comeback.
Classic example, right? I know a woman, Shelley Olds, was in the break in the road race in London, and she flatted out of the break, and that was it. Yeah. That was her chance for a medal, just evaporated because of a flat tire. It was heartbreaking. It doesn't happen very often in cycling, but somehow we sent a man to the moon in the 1970s, supposedly. And sorry, should have thrown that in there. And we still have fucking flat tires at the Olympic level. I don't know why that is. Kind of annoying. But
well, what's really cool, I'm a nerd with all sorts of random things. I think they've invented a really good airless tire for Mars missions, because it's like there's no service.
Right.
You can't service the lander.
Can't fix a flat there.
When it, I don't know, when it comes to all this data, I want to bring it back to something like big picture and just think out loud here. Is there's something inherently fragile about that to me. Yeah. Well, because this computer said this, therefore I'm going to win. And I'm like, well, life has a way of throwing a wrench at things.
Yes.
So how well can you adapt? And I think I'm more proud of Haley coming back from that flat tire than her winning the silver medal. So many people would be like, my race is done.
Yeah.
And she
found a way to fight.
She like hesitated, or she like, I think when we talked about it, it was for, I don't want to speak on her behalf, but like for a fraction of a second. And she's like, nope, just keep going. Get a new tire on the bike. And she climbed back up, and I was so impressed.
For a man or woman with a why, there is a how.
Yeah.
You figure it out. If the dream is big enough, you just fucking keep going. I've had moments where I've had that pull.
Yeah. Not enough. More people need to read some of Viktor Frankl's work.
Yeah. So I'm really enjoying our conversation. It's awesome. Can we zoom back out? Okay, we went from feet to hands. Can we go towards the middle, standards of strength, just to give people what your idea of a North Star is there? So we talked about hands, grip. So 20% of body weight for single-handed hang would be a great way. And that also helps with shoulder. But I think you had a scap pull-up, single-arm scap pull-up.
I think eight's good. Single-arm scap pull-ups are doable regardless of gender.
Again, taking consideration for people that weigh 108 pounds or 220 pounds, it falls off the belt.
I would say above like 260, 270.
Yeah.
It starts to not be as doable. Although like a few of my NFL linemen can do it, and they're 315 pounds. So like
Most people above 260, they'll have bigger problems than grip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So women 1 to 3 unassisted pull-ups, men 5 to 8 unassisted.
2-armed.
Yeah, 2-armed pull-ups.
Pronated grip, supinated grip, don't care.
Don't care.
Okay.
If you play baseball and you want your arm to feel good, I want a 1-arm isometric pull-up.
What does that mean?
You hold your elbow around, let's just call it 90 degrees.
Yeah.
On one arm, and you don't go anywhere.
For how long?
3 seconds, 5 seconds. Just do it.
Okay.
Show me ownership. Show me control.
You can hold without.
You can create tension there.
Yeah.
I want that level of intensity in your arm if you want to throw close to 100 miles an hour.
Okay.
And you should be able to do that almost any day of the week.
All right.
1 reverse Nordic for the knees.
So describe a reverse Nordic.
So you're sitting on you're kneeling on both your knees, and your feet are flat to the ground. Your shins are behind you.
Yeah.
And then you lean back with your thighs staying parallel with your spine.
Mm-hmm.
Your butt kisses your heels. You come back up.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. 1 and done. I just want 1. So like, it's just a lot of force through your knees at a deep range.
Yeah. And a lot of, that's a long quad there.
Yeah. Here's another one that I think surprisingly few people can do. A continuous exhale for at least 35 seconds through your nose or mouth. Don't care. But that's for CO2 tolerance.
Right. So, yeah. You definitely had some CO2 tolerance stuff in there. And some of that seems like it's oxygen advantage derived, possibly.
I've taken it a lot more from some of Brian McKenzie's work.
I didn't know if he was an oxygen advantage coach.
I don't think so. I don't know. But I also I just have a expert on my team who's my airway and breath coach. And so like, I don't go to the research. I just go to her. It's a lot easier.
Who's your expert?
Her name's Deanna Marinucci.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is she here in Colorado?
No, she's in Santa Cruz, California.
Okay.
So, but if anybody wants to get in contact with her, just let me know.
Cool.
She's the athletes that have used her have promised me not to tell me who uses her.
Right.
So I will just say she's a secret weapon for many people.
Cool. I like secret weapons.
It's not just CO2 tolerance, but like, how big is the hole you're breathing through in your neck? Like airway. Yeah. Airway matters. Bigger hole, more air.
More air. Mm-hmm.
Can you walk for 90 minutes without opening your mouth and nasal breathing the whole time?
Mm-hmm.
It's like such low hanging fruit, and
so many people can't do it.
Can't do that.
Not even close. Yeah.
Yeah. Oops. And I'm just like, what are you doing grinding on the Zwift or whatever on the bike if you can't do this? Like, there's a CrossFit Games athlete that I worked with, and her CO2 tolerance, meaning her continuous exhale, was like 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what do you like? We could make this better. And she's like, nah, I'm not into breath work. I'll just redline my heart all the time. I'm like, okay, so that is
sweetheart. No.
That is very much CrossFit.
Yeah.
Good for you. You're doing it.
Yeah.
I think an assisted, like strong, regular Nordic hamstring curl is doable for everybody. Gen Pop.
Okay.
Just some sort of assistance.
So Nordic, because there's Nordic, which is a quad exercise.
The reverse Nordic is quad exercise.
Right.
So reverse Nordic, quad, regular Nordic hamstring curl.
So you go the other way. It's the same starting posture, but you would normally have your ankles.
Your heels are anchored to something.
Right.
I think that's doable.
You fall forward and you use your hamstrings to control the fall.
And a lot of people, I think, are going to say, wow, that's really hard. And I'm like, I think this should be doable. And I'm giving people assistance. I think that one's a lot harder than the reverse Nordic.
Yeah.
Okay. And then as for the spine,
what about glutes and hips though? We covered quads and hams.
Oh.
I mean, glutes, deadlift, right? Hex bar deadlift 2.0.
I guess. Oh yeah. So hex bar deadlift, women 1.5 times their body weight at least.
For one rep max.
For one rep.
Men is about
2 rep.
Yeah.
Or 2 times body weight.
Yeah. I think Ryan Flaherty talked about that standard a long time ago, if you know that guy. He
does all the combine, NFL combine stuff, right?
Yeah.
He just from my understanding, and this is going to be a gross oversimplification, I hear people go to him to just get higher combine scores to get drafted better and make some money.
Yeah.
He's not a skill person, and the combine isn't going to Gets people paid, but it's not going to keep people in the NFL.
Right.
They'll get them drafted higher.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So that's hips. Trunk and core.
Man, I don't know.
Test.
SOAS test.
I think this one's hard for cyclists. We saw a video of Haley doing it.
Oh, yeah. So if you're seated.
I can say that.
Yeah, that's fine. That one's fine.
Okay.
If you're seated right now and your hips are at 90 degrees, there's only one hip flexor that can pull your leg up, and that's your psoas, because it attaches in your spine and not at your pelvis. And so you should be able to lift that up about another 30 degrees without your back rounding. So cyclists especially will lift their knee up and they'll be watching us and listening, like, what are you talking about? This is easy. I can do this all day. And yeah, but you're rounding your back to do so.
Yeah.
So you're not actually moving that joint accurately. That psoas is not actually shortening.
Right.
So that would be for hip flexors. As far as spine, I don't know. I might have put something in that document, but like, there's nothing too concrete here, because the spine has to do so many different things, and I have much more of a qualitative assessment. And like, it's not going to be planks, because planks just make you better at doing planks. Like, I think I have a very strong spine. I can do a lot of heavy lifts. Planks are so hard for me, but I'm also 6'4" and like 225. I have a much longer lever to move than anybody else.
Yeah. You mentioned something about GHDs, and like, I feel like there should be some sort of standard for maybe holding an isometric prone cobra or a kind of Superman style posture. I mean, getting into it is one thing, but maybe holding for a period of time.
Yeah. Like, the spine is like, do you own strength in the end ranges that your spine can move? So you're upside down on GHD or supine.
Sorry, Liz, GHD is a glute ham developer. It's a thing that looks like, how do we describe it?
It's a half moon cushion with little like
ankle thingies,
hooks for your ankles.
Yeah. So you can do it either facing down or facing up.
Or sideways. You can use it all sort of creative ways.
Just wanted to make sure people know what we're talking about.
You can imagine this way. If you were hanging your torso off the bed and somebody was sitting on your feet, you'd want to be able to get your spine all the way down to the bottom of the floor. So your spine is almost 90 degrees from your thighs.
And
not 90 degrees, your shoulders, but 45.
Yeah. And we'd want to see articulation ideally spread amongst the vertebra to some.
This is why it gets so tricky, is like there's a lot of qualitative assessment with the spine, is that I want to see segmental movement. So your fingers can be a good example where like you're bending at each knuckles rather than bending at one. So bending like a C instead of a K.
Yeah. Or an L.
Or an L, where all the stress is on one joint instead of throughout the whole spine.
Yeah. So in the check system, this would be a stability ball crunch, we'd call it. You'd lay over the stability ball.
Sure.
Right. And then see if you can segmentally come up all the way to vertical.
Yep.
And then lay down. That, I mean, it's still.
Yeah. So I would add to that is like, if you're doing this shirtless, I would want to see wrinkle, again, coming back to skin.
Yeah.
As you're coming up, that you'd see a wrinkle under the pec, then at the first top ab, but then between the top,
the wrinkle would descend towards the pelvis.
Sequentially.
Oh yeah.
And that would indicate that you're probably bending one vertebrae at a time, and that skin is starting to fold.
Yeah.
That almost is never the case.
Yeah. And you could do the opposite in extension. You would see the right amount of
undo
wrinkles or undo on the front, or wrinkles in the back.
Back doesn't wrinkle as easily because you're not able to extend as much as you're able to flex.
Right. Unless we're seeing striations in the lumbar spine, which can indicate some disc slippage, right?
I don't know about that, but like lower down the spine, you can see some wrinkles, but not so much. Like your thoracic spine is not going to wrinkle.
No, right. Yeah. Normally not, unless something's really odd.
Yeah.
So I love this concept of wrinkles, right? I often coach my athletes, like when I'm setting up handlebars, I want to have what I would call a neutral wrist, right? So not a lot of extension or flexion, not a lot of weird in a static position where people are holding the bars. A lot of times people dump their wrists is what I call it, where they just go into extension. We see a lot of wrinkles on the top side, and then they wonder why they've got,
So with a joint like the wrist, I want to see like more of a crisp one fat wrinkle,
right,
instead of many wrinkles.
So what I offer is,
because it's one, what's ultimately just one joint that's bending.
As opposed to like what I have.
Exactly.
Multiple wrinkles. Yeah. There you can see all my wrinkles.
And even from far away, you can see one clean wrist wrinkle there. The Achilles will have probably one deeper wrinkle, but then some throughout, and that's just the nature of the skin and the tendon there. But on the front of the ankle and dorsiflexion, it's similar. You can have one crisp, clean wrinkle, maybe two or three accessory ones on the front and outside of the ankle.
Yeah.
So these are some of the qualitative assessments that I then look for how somebody's moving.
But super important point there is I put this together at a time. I mean, you probably noticed I have Kelly's book somewhere on one of these shelves. And
Kelly's Tourette?
Yeah, you mentioned some of the damage he's done in the world of this and that with his cues. And I think that aside, one thing I like that he talked about is, look, ultimately there's a lot of discussion around where your feet should be when you squat. And at one point I heard him say, look, just stop discussing it. Your feet should more or less be straight when you squat. That's the end goal. And I see so many of my cyclists come in and I ask them to do a deep squat as part of my assessment, and poof, the feet go way out. And then they show me how deep they can get. And I'm like, this is awesome. I really appreciate the range of motion you have here, but there's one problem. You don't pedal with your feet pointed out at a 40-degree angle. Cycling requires your feet to be basically straight ahead. Yep. And I would offer that anytime we're moving forward, our feet should point where we're going. Running, walking, cycling, whatever we're doing.
I have almost the word for word same heuristic.
So you need to start squatting with your feet roughly the width. Let's just say if you're a cyclist, we need them roughly hip width distance because that's roughly the stance of your crankset. And we need your feet pointed straight ahead. Show me what you can do there. And when they do that and we let the knees go out, then we get internal rotation or IR of the lower limb coupled with a nice strong domed arch, hopefully, and a foot that's pointed straight ahead, and external rotation of the upper limb.
And the femur.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, sorry. Yes, the upper leg and femur. And then we get what you would call as a proper tensegrity pattern in the lower body.
Yes.
But we also start to facilitate the ability for that wrinkle on the outside of the ankle, that clean wrinkle on the outside of the ankle. But if your foot is pointed out with your femur at 40 degrees or whatever, your whole knee, then you're not going to see that.
Yeah. So I see that external rotation as people getting like a false dorsiflexion. They're able to bend their ankle, so to speak, but not accurately, and putting stress on tissues that weren't designed for that.
Yep.
They didn't evolve for that. One of my main backgrounds is the study of evolution, how movement changed from species to species, especially with us. The only nuance that I would say is that in dorsiflexion, the arch actually must compress. So it's not that the arch disappears, but it isn't as high of a dome as when you are on your toes. Right. So the arch needs to move. And if people are wearing like a plastic orthotic that is keeping the arch up, that's going to force movement elsewhere.
What about a carbon fiber orthotic like I used for like 8 years?
Yeah, that's going to force you to move elsewhere.
Right.
And that can be a good thing. Like I've had athletes who have an like there's one in particular, very arthritic big toe.
Yep.
Can't bend it, should not bend it.
Right.
So he needs a shoe that is, basically 2x4.
Yeah.
And that carbon plate works wonders for him.
But then his ankle is going to have to make up for that.
Exactly. So it's, can't beat him, join him.
Right.
So give him the capacity to do the thing the way that it's didn't evolve to do it. But that tensegrity. So tensegrity is this amalgamation of words called tension and integrity. So when you move in this way, you create tensional integrity at your joints so that your muscles, the things within your system keep things intact. And when I started toying around with this concept almost 10 years ago, I started following the anatomy. It almost goes hand in hand. So part of the reason why we need that at the knee is the tibia and the shin to internally rotate and the femur to externally rotate. Is one, it makes a cleaner, more powerful knee bend. Two, it recruits much larger muscles. There are a lot of muscles that promote these kinds of movement patterns. And so then we come back to this principle that we've talked about almost this entire time of can we spread force throughout a lot of different muscles and joints.
Attenuate is my favorite.
Yeah, it's a great word.
Yeah.
And when you move these ways, you have a lot more muscles involved at good and appropriate lengths.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have that tibial external rotation, your outer hamstrings are at their extreme length more often than they're not. Your inner hamstrings are a lot longer. So outer ones are short, inner ones are longer. Then the muscles that go down the inside of your ankle get a lot longer. likely and get also much more expensive. Maybe you stop bending through your big toe and you develop a bunion.
Yep.
There's a lot of different risks. Like I said, risk agent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that could happen, but when you have that tensegrity pattern, you're loading a lot of distinct evolutionary traits that are unique to our species and how we move as a bipedal brachiator. That's how I think of us. Like, we walk on 2 feet, but our shoulders are almost indistinguishable from a chimpanzee or an orangutan.
Yep. Meant for hanging and
swinging and climbing.
Yeah. And climbing out. So you said you feel that hanging and climbing are some of the best activities, right?
Yeah. Like, I think climbing is one of the few that can really self-organize the shoulder into a lot better positions.
Yeah.
But you talked about the shoulder being intimidating because it has so many degrees of freedom, so many complexities and movement options. The reason why it has that is so that we can climb.
Yeah.
So that we can hang. The whole reason why the shoulder blade moved from the sides of the rib cage, like your dog, like underneath your armpit, to the back, is so that we have greater ranges of motion to reach things, to climb, to do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So having that complexity in our environment and in our training nourishes the complexity in our anatomy.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just doing your pull-ups, your rows, your shoulder press, and your bench press, you're moving more like a Lego character than a human.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry, many pieces.
I know I just threw a lot.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. I like it. So returning to standards of strength then, we covered foot and ankle, calves.
Knee, hamstring, quad,
hip.
Hip-ish, spine,
Trunk-ish.
shoulder, elbow, kind of. We can get into some nuances if anybody plays baseball or tennis.
Yeah, some of this stuff, right? I mean, and the only other one I can think of is like pushing exercises, because like hanging is fundamentally a pull derivative. So you talked about in your course pushing with an elevated
So
shoulder,
quote unquote, rounded shoulders gets a lot of hate.
Shoulders down and back.
Always. How's that working out for you? Oh yeah, I've got 2 years of shoulder pain. Cool. Keep making the same decisions. Sorry, just little attitude there.
Big picture is to move with a lot of variety sorry, I'm interrupting you, but
you're good.
To move the shoulder, or to move all body muscles, joints,
to own the inherent ranges of motion that humans have.
Yeah.
The shoulder blade can elevate, it can shrug, and it can tilt forward. There's nothing wrong with that.
Unless we're locked in that.
Unless you're locked in it and
all the time.
It's your only solution.
Right.
Or if you're in the opposite.
Or vice versa.
Right. So a push-up, by definition is pretty much a quadrupedal exercise. And when the elbow goes behind you and you start going into shoulder extension, the socket has to follow the ball and socket joint. So when your elbow goes backward, the ball at the top of the shoulder is going to kind of come forward.
Yeah.
And so if the ball in the socket is going forward, but you're keeping your shoulder blade back and down, that's starting to separate the socket from the ball.
Right.
So there's my logic. The next thing is that I have never seen anybody who interacts with the ground, like an elite Cirque du Soleil performer or a break dancer or an elite rock climber who gets in that shoulder extension position. Almost all of them uniformly get the anterior tilt and elevation of the shoulder blade. The shoulder blade should rise and rotate over the rib cage to follow the ball and keep that ball and socket joint have tensional integrity.
Right. Yeah. Hi, Don. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So then so really what you're saying is the most effective push position is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's that to follow, only when the elbow is in a certain orientation.
When the elbows go back.
Yeah.
And every other quadrupedal species does this. If you watch like a cheetah or your dog or a cat, bring their head down like doing a push-up to drink water out of a bowl or drink water out of a river that you see on your South African safari, that shoulder blade tilts forward.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big fan of saying like, well, if it's true for us, it's probably got to be true for a lot of other animals.
Yeah.
And this rigid idea about shoulder blades have to be down and back all the time doesn't hold up in evolution, but it doesn't even hold up in practice. Like, I wouldn't be where I am today if shoulders down and back worked all the time. And like, this is the stuff that we started off the podcast with of like, well, I guess you just need to do more down and back, more scapular stability. And it's like, well, I've been paying you for like 8 weeks and my shoulder still hurts.
8 years. Like,
we're at years.
So there's a lot of rhetoric, and maybe we can do like a rapid fire of like shitty sayings you hear or rhetoric that you hear and shoot it down in flames.
Just say when.
Go. What are your most despised?
Your back is allowed to round.
Okay.
It's also allowed to extend. Your spine exists to bend in multiple directions. Every cylinder built in nature is meant to do two things. Like a palm tree will bend in all sorts of different directions at different times and different contexts. Cylinders also exist to handle vertical forces. That's why a femur is cylindrical and not a rectangle.
Right.
That's why your molar is a cylinder, not a rectangle.
Handle that crushing force.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're just getting to the physics of this. Okay. Rounding the back isn't the problem. The fact is that you don't have the capacity to round your back, or maybe you did it at the wrong time. Like, if you're going for a 1 rep max, I probably don't want your back rounded.
Right.
Can you do a Jefferson curl? Hell yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Avoid mummification of the spine is how I would synopsize that. Right. Yeah.
You hear bullshit like, oh, if you push your, sorry, I hope I'm not attacking anybody's beliefs. I really want to just attack ideas, not people, and just give you another vine to swing to. So I hear this thing about if you push your big toe down on the ground, it'll unlock your glutes and you'll get more posterior chain work. And like, okay, walk me through this because this doesn't make sense. Your flexor hallucis longus stops at the knee. How is that going to unlock your glute? Secondly, your glute is an external rotator and hip extensor. So how is your big toe going to help that function happen more?
Right.
Okay. This idea of the spine being the engine.
Yeah, spinal engine, yeah.
Spinal engine. The trend within all evolution of movement for the last, I don't know, a couple hundred of years is that as life evolves, the spine becomes less and less of the engine. The spine is an engine if you're a tuna fish.
Right.
But where is the biggest muscles in our body? Glute. Legs.
Well, depends if we're talking surface area or mass, but lats.
Yeah, lats are also big. But again, like your lats not your spine.
No.
And so like the muscle is the literal engine. It is where fuel gets converted into energy. That is what an engine does. And the muscles in our glutes and thighs got a lot bigger to be engines. Secondly, there's this video circulating the internet every now and then of an armless, legless man walking. And that's like supposedly evidence for it being a spinal engine theory, but that doesn't do that to a dog and the dog doesn't go anywhere. It's not a snake. Like these principles have to apply across the board. We're not that special. We're unique in that we're bipeds, but like we're not special to have that many distinct rules about being human. This doesn't mean the spine is rigid. The spine absolutely needs to move. But it is not it's not the generator
of the force. Yeah,
exactly.
I would agree. I think all that video shows is that man managed to use his spine to locomote, but that's an adaptation. It's like someone who's blind has better hearing. If
we could do a very gross analysis, like look at how a tuna fish propels itself or a dolphin, look at a cheetah, and look at some of the best sprinters in the world. There is a clear trend from more spinal movement to less spinal movement. And don't even bring up Usain Bolt. The dude was this dude was injured every year but the Olympics. He's just kind of just lucky, and he has some scoliosis. So this doesn't validate anything. Secondly, like we don't even want to open up the Pandora's box of cognitive biases. Usain Bolt could also be titled "The Story of Survivorship Bias."
I mean, this is such an excellent point to watch. We have this happening in cycling right now too, and I listened to a pod recently where a guy made a really good point. He was a doctor, and he said, look, it doesn't make any sense that an amateur athlete or a master's athlete or an age-graded athlete would try to do what Pogacar is doing. Like, why would they do that? He's like, all World Tour level cyclists are already the top 10th of 1% of all humanity. Mm-hmm. But Pogi is the 0.5% of that World Tour peloton. Like, he's the exceptional of the exceptional. He's like 1 in 8 billion.
Wow.
He's insanely good at what he does. Genius level. Like, yeah, exactly. Hyper genius, or whatever you call it, super genius. Wile E. Coyote, and of movement in his own, just by, we'd say blind luck, but I don't know. I don't really believe they're accidents. But anyway, like, the point is, to emulate him in any sense makes not a lot of sense, because he's such a special individual. And to that extent, we could say the same thing about everyone else. You don't have to be at the very, 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 very top of the food pyramid for it to not make sense to emulate someone's calorie choices, training methodologies, movement programs. But people don't know what to do. So there's a video circulating of Pogi doing some like banded crab walk or something before, as a warm-up before some race. And everyone's like, quick, run out and do it. It's like, for fuck's sakes, like, I mean, by all means, like,
go try it.
Go try it. Go try it.
Fuck around, find out.
Maybe it works great.
But don't get it twisted that this is going to make you great.
It might help you. It may work by happenstance. Sure.
Right. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
To bumble around in the dark.
So pinching your shoulder blades is not a panacea. There's... you can't reach overhead and also pinch your shoulder blade together. Like, this is basic kinematics of, like, when you reach overhead, the shoulder blade has to upwardly rotate. If you're pinching it together all the time,
you could with a lot of rib cage rotation, maybe.
I mean, you're just going to be really limited.
Yeah.
One that you and I don't see eye to eye on, and I think it's just because of our differences in our experience and success, is how we talked about at the course. You found a lot of success with pulling your belly button to your spine. I found a lot of success with doing the opposite.
Yep.
And I think where we ended up landing in our discussion is there's like a happy middle ground. I'm not telling you to, be distended, but there's not a whole lot of research on this. There's one, though, that shows when people brace their core, there's a lot higher ground reaction forces. They absorb force, they attenuate force worse during jumps.
Well, I believe that. I mean, I haven't read that study, but if you think about it, like, I think bracing a core is it's a similar cue to shoulders down and back. Like, you over-index on it, right? The point is, and this is something that's really teased out in the Czech Institute, is the difference between doing and feeling, which gets into cueing, right? Most of the time you ask people, like, you see someone who's got really poor pelvic control under load, right? Or maybe, poor pelvic posture under load, and they don't really have awareness. So you want to create a sense of awareness. You want to create that internal cueing and start to get them clued in. So it's like, all right, I want you to, I use the gentlest terminology possible. So I would say something like, I want you to gently feel your belly button pull towards your spine. I want you to simultaneously gently feel the pelvic floor lift at the same moment. And we're talking 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
And still 99% of athletes, because they're in the paradigm of, this is the expert, this is dad. It's a Judeo-Christian belief system of, like, I'm here to learn and I'm the child, and I will only get to go through the shining gate of heaven when I do it good enough and get my gold star. So I'm going to immediately go to 9 out of 10 and go, and then I'm going to lift from that point. And so I can imagine a bunch of lab coat people instructing people to brace their core when they try to pull a bar off the ground and measure with a force plate or whatever. And I mean, sure. That's a great example of again, disclaimer, I haven't read the study.
No,
I can
you're
see
good.
How it will quickly turn into this.
I'm nodding with you of, like, I mean, the transverse abdomen is just another muscle.
Yeah.
Know how to use it, and know how to use it to different degrees of variability.
Yes. Like, it's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum. There is use in that 3% intensity, 1 out of 10 intensity. Same thing with pelvic floor. Like, I think people would be surprised how many men I refer out to one of my pelvic floor therapists, because I mean, they're just walking around with their butthole clenched all day. And then that ends up being like one of the only cues. I get a voice memo back and they're like, yeah, Brett or whoever was just squeezing his butthole all day. Like, that's not great for his pelvic floor. And that was, contributing toward his back problems.
God forbid anything go in or out of that.
Right. And like, I think you got to be a little bit aware of what other muscles are in the core.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, for some of the listeners, it might be illuminating that yes, men do have pelvic floors.
Yes, they do.
And
their buttholes don't have to be watertight all the time either.
Yeah. And then like, if we're talking postpartum, like then there's a whole different conversation that I am not qualified to have, but I refer out to a pelvic floor PT where it's like, yeah, they're doing a lot of transverse abdominal work. You just had a muscle stretched out for 9 months.
Right. Postpartum and or wow, my brain just
rectus
shut off.
diastasis.
Well, yes, and what is it called when we
C-section?
Thank you. Cesareans. Yeah. My wife had one. I should know that. Yeah. I mean, so not only do we get the stretching of the abdominal muscles and the blowout of all that connective tissue, but then we're going to slice a hole in it at the key moment as well. This is potentially
requires a lot more rehab than all right, wait for a little bit and then just start walking and running slowly.
Right. The doctor just slap him on the ass on the way out the door and be like, thanks
good job, Mom.
Kid. Good job. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This person can't bear load now safely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other myths? I mean, those are the hot button topics that I typically go around. I mean, one of my favorite lines is like, if that 9 out of 10 bracing of your abdominals was good, then my hands around your neck suffocating you would help stabilize your neck. It's still part of your spine. I just had to drop that in there because I think it's hilarious. People might think it's a terrible joke.
A bit weird. Before we get into David Carradine land.
Yeah. So I think that's it. The main thing for myths. The ideas that I think need to go down is like, or go down in fiery hell is like, pain is so much more malleable than people think. It can go away very quickly with the right problem solving framework. And just being willing to be wrong so you can make a different guess. Very good guesses. All training and rehab is guessing. The difference between great practitioners and rookies is just the quality of the guess.
Bike fitting is the same. I would say the same thing. And the most disturbing part about that sentence is that most bike fitters don't actually, even the people who are being paid to be bike fitters, don't understand that really what they're doing is making educated guesses. They're under the belief system that they have knowledge that they can drop on clients, and this is false. You don't know shit. Neither do I. You know
what's interesting? So related to shoes, one of my friends is a huge shoe research nerd for runners.
Okay.
And I think the one metric that came back that was the best metric for, is this shoe a good fit for them? Hey, is it comfortable?
Yeah. Right.
That's it. Doesn't matter how resilient the foam is or how much energy return it is. In fact, that's doing a lot more harm than good, I think, with people wearing super shoes because they want to improve their marathon time. But they don't run fast enough to utilize the foam in the shoe.
Okay.
And so they're getting a lot of hip and thigh injuries, or they're getting a lot of leg injuries. You have to run at a certain speed, just like an F1 car. If you drive that thing slowly, it's going to break.
It's going to drive like shit and be dangerous potentially.
And what's funny is I was, I bought a new running shoe not too long ago. I was like, all right, I think I'm, improved my running. I'm going to get a little bit stiffer foam. I'm not going in the super shoe category. And I'm like, God, this thing sucks. I'm going back to my old beater shoe with holes in the sides and so much more comfortable. And I'm enjoying my run.
Yeah. I actually run in Vivos with the bigger tread, not this one. This is the soft ground, but I run in the full ground because I have that backwards. This is what I call the FG.
Yeah, we have
the tread.
Same one.
Oh, we do. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's a little more.
Yours is a little more. Yeah, mine are newer, but they have a soft ground, which has a longer lug. And I love that for running because it's basically just a rubber bumper, but it moves a little bit.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've ran in these as well. I've ran in barefoot sandals and other things. Like shoes are just a different tool for the job. You know, I don't think, I personally love living my life in barefoot shoes. And then I have a bunch of different shoes for different tools, different exercises, just like I have my mountain biking shoes and I've got my running shoes. What I think people romanticize is like,
here's a myth.
Barefoot is best.
Or if you put a barefoot shoe on, it will fix your feet.
Yeah, not at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's way more to it than that. Sorry. It's not that simple.
I wish it was.
Right.
You know, and I've had so many clients show up in their Vibrams or their Vibram 5 fingers or their Vivo Barefoots, and like their foot is a mess. Their ankle's terrible. And like, hey man, I'm glad you're wearing that shoe. And we have a lot of work to do.
Right. Right.
You know, and
Yep.
It's not inherently better or worse. Like I would say maybe where we do have an argument is if the toe box is too narrow for your foot, you might want to rethink your choices.
Yeah, for sure.
That might be one of the main parts where I'm a stickler.
I'll go further than that. I have a thing I've said on my pod in the past, which I think people have a hard time with. So I'll say it again. I think foam is evil. And here's why. If we're looking at the lens of evolutionary biology and we're thinking about gait. Oh, he's on your bottle.
Yeah, sorry, our insect friend.
Okay, so we're thinking about evolutionary biology, like we're thinking about running and walking, bipedal gait.
Yep.
And we evolved to run over all kinds of different surfaces, not concrete, of course, although now we're forced to deal with that. But from the long picture evolutionary lens, we learned to walk and run over sand, stones probably, although we picked that less often unless we had to, soft dirt. But there's almost nothing in nature that I can think of that duplicates the texture or consistency of foam. Like maybe running next to a lake in a kind of half swamp sort of situation.
Or by the beach on the sand that's wet.
Medium. Yeah, maybe.
It's still firm. It's very It's odd.
But foam compresses and then rebounds. Yeah. Nothing in nature does that. And I don't think that is a good thing for the nervous system. And I support that sentence based on my own N of 1 of me trying to run in foamy shoes. And I can't describe how much it fucked up my muscles and my nervous system the few times I've done that. It gives me this weird sense of like my legs are wrecked in a way that I've only experienced when I've run in foamy shoes. And
Can I tell you why?
Sure.
So different surfaces produce different responses within the legs and the muscles. This is some research from Beno, B-E-N-O, Nig, N-I-G-G.
Okay.
And
what
he shows...
What nationality is that person?
I don't know.
That's an interesting name. Okay.
I want to guess like New Zealand.
Beno Nig.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I could be way off.
Okay. Sorry.
You're good. So this might actually make a lot of sense with biking, is that the environment in that one step of your stride becomes part of your system. Mm-hmm. And some of that work can get exported to the foam.
Yeah.
And so when that foam is there to absorb some of that work, your legs don't have to bend as much.
Right. So we're talking about stiffness of the joints.
Yeah. So your leg and muscles become stiffer in a more foamy shoe, a softer shoe.
Isn't that backwards though? Because Irene Davis's research showed that the more foam we put under the heel, the harder we heel strike.
That's still, it depends on a choice and mechanics of how they run.
Okay.
And where the foot strike is.
Okay.
If the foot strike is out in front versus underneath, that's going to be very, very different.
See, I was under the impression that the observation of that study was that, I'd have to go read it again, that they just put people in different shoes and then they researched, probably using force plate, I guess, if I remember right. It's been a long time since I've looked at that. And they just came to the conclusion that the more padding we put, it was independent of any coaching around stride.
Here, let's take this to extremes.
Sure.
So if I'm going to have you jump off of a 5-foot box, how soft will your landing be if you land on cement?
Right.
Versus a rock climbing
I'll have to
pad.
absorb more on cement. Right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So your legs have to soften.
Right.
Whereas
on
foam,
you can
land almost straight-legged.
Yeah.
And this is what I said.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is why I said different shoes have different purposes.
Yeah.
That stiffness, the word stiff is a really bad connotation, but you need stiffness. You need ground reaction forces to move fast. So, like, as much as you and I may like to move and run in a barefoot shoe, records won't be broken in them.
Right.
That's why you're seeing this proliferation of super shoes to the point where they're getting illegal.
Yeah.
Because they're creating a stiffer spring so that people can get off the ground faster and run faster. And export some of that work to, foam instead
device.
of it's not metabolic.
Right. Yeah. It's a more efficient lever effectively.
But part of the problem is that stiffness. So if you land and your muscles go into like isometric contraction, they don't lengthen. It's a big cost on your tendons. So your tendon program you have to have robust tendons, because the stiffer you land, the more that elasticity is coming from your tendons instead of your muscles.
So a really heavy runner will more likely...
What do you mean by heavy?
Well,
someone who bends their knee a lot?
No, I mean someone who's got a lot of body weight and would have more... Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume somebody who weighs 200 pounds has more pounds per square inch in their Achilles than someone who's 108.
Yep.
Right, even though the Achilles are proportionally
you can use like you and I would be good examples.
Yeah, good example. Yeah, okay, right. So I'm 150, and you're how much you say?
225.
225. So you're running, and you're in a foamy shoe. We would expect more load potentially on your Achilles or any given tendon.
Yeah.
Than you would for me, even if we had similar technique in the same foamy shoe.
You would have to move a lot faster.
Right.
So remember, let's review some basic. I hate using math here, but force equals mass times acceleration. So you would just have to move a lot faster to hit the same force as me if I'm running slower.
Yeah. I forgot what my point was there. I got lost in shoe physics.
I don't know. But the reason why I think your joints hurt after that soft shoe is your tendons might not have been prepared for that.
That's probably...
So you're running in barefoot shoes. It's a much more muscular demanding strategy, and you might have that capacity more inherently.
Okay. Yeah. So foamy shoes will put more tension into the tendons.
Based on my understanding.
Yeah. So someone who is an age group runner, and they are training a normal amount, and they're getting ready for Boston Marathon, and they go out and they buy a super shoe thinking they're going to improve their performance. The risk is that they smoke themselves in training or in the race on race day with a tendon injury.
I just saw an Instagram clip, didn't watch the podcast, but a local guy who's running ultra marathons, David Roach. The clip was him on the Rich Roll podcast saying like, super shoe is just more fun, like encouraging people to go buy it. And while I love that attitude, there's big trade-offs and there's costs.
Yeah.
Not to mention the $300 shoe. And again, if we come back to the research, what the research says about the best shoe for most people, dude, what's comfortable?
Right.
I run in a $70 soft Brooks shoe. It almost looks like a dad shoe. It's so comfortable, and it lets me just run as much as I want.
Yeah.
I probably would need to pick up my speed if I want to go to that stiffer shoe that I bought and then just now is collecting dust.
I mean, this goes, I talk a lot about this, and I spoke about this with Courtney Conley, Dr. Courtney Conley on my pod as well, about shoes and footpads and the relationship with cycling, and how I think, as you said, even with runners, we have problems, or baseball players, we have problems with the foot and ankle being neglected as part of the power transfer chain. And in cycling, that's also true, but I think even more, because modern cycling shoes, like road shoes, are so stiff.
Yeah.
And they've got these ridiculous marketing things on them, like on the bottom of the sole. Everything has to be carbon fiber in cycling, everything. And stiffer and lighter is always better, always. Yeah. And at the bottom it says stiffness index 13. It's like, go fuck yourself, San Diego. This is like the stupidest thing ever. But when we put that stiff lever under there, it's just going to encourage riders to just let their ankle be this floppy blob of jello, right? And then we put a stiff footbed in there.
I don't know. I don't have enough experience.
This is how I think about it.
Yeah, but
maybe I'm
the concrete outside doesn't. If we put a soft shoe on a cyclist, would that result in a stiffer leg. I don't think it's...
well, think about it this way. If I put flat pedals on your mountain bike and told you to go ride up Flagstaff Mountain with flip-flops, you'd have a much more active foot and ankle. And out of necessity, if you had some internal knowledge about biomechanics, you'd have to orient your foot with a little more attention. But if you have I've got a shoe over there that's a Bont. It's basically a carbon fiber bathtub, and I can put a rigid footbed in there. You put your foot in there and you can literally just let it be a blob of jello, and it'll be held into some sort of ostensible unicorn subtalar neutral position. And you just smash the watts with your knees and quads or glutes, and everything below that is a bit. But ultimately, there's going to be a lack of power transfer, and the foot will start to do this in the pedal stroke instead of be
now that I think about the feet of the cyclist clients that I've used, that they're terrible. They are pretty bad.
You put someone in a standing forward lunge or put them on one leg, and the ankle's just all over the place. Yeah. Right. How I think about cycling ideally is, imagine have you been up the goat trail up Sanitas yet?
A few times. Yeah.
So you want to run up that. What's required for a good stroke there? You're pushing with the forefoot, and there has to be power transfer all the way to the glute, right? And even to the opposite arm and lat.
It's like you're running stairs.
You're running stairs. Yep. That is cycling. It is running stairs.
Totally.
Problem is, we put a rigid shoe on the bottom and we don't give a fuck about the ankle.
Yep.
And all the mechanics falls apart.
Yeah.
So you're running, this is like cycling is running stairs, is my opinion.
Yeah.
And this is what I don't think people see when they look at Pogacar. If you ever see some video of him, I'm happy to pull some up if you want, but the guy's basically a marathon runner on a bike. He's a super stiff spring. His ankle doesn't move at all during the stroke.
Awesome.
So he just goes ding, and he gets this little rhythm going, ding, 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 ding. And he's got incredible lactate transport across the cell membrane. So you put those two together, he just drops bombs on the peloton.
What's the data on Paralympians who are like W amputees below the knee, and they're just using just
some sort of
rigid stick?
Yeah, right. Like the Pistorius runner.
Yeah, but those
had the
blades were engineered to have similar elasticity to an Achilles,
right?
To try to make it more fair.
Yeah. So there's not many. I've worked with a few Paralympians and amputees, and they just have a rigid post that goes down and attaches to a pedal, right? So it's a great question. I mean, I think if you were a double amputee below the knee, I would assume that you'd have almost no disadvantage, we'll say. I don't know if I can use that word without being like tone deaf or something.
No, it seems like that could also be almost advantageous because there's no slack to take out.
There's no slack, but you're giving up the third lever, right? So when we think about cycling, upper limb goes between horizontal and vertical. The lower limb is mostly vertical, and then the foot is mostly horizontal, except in a few cases where people have a strategy of this for various reasons. Yeah. Namely, their saddle's way too high. But so there's some other ones too. But we're giving up the third lever, but that's okay. I think the trade-off probably could be, ultimately you could be ahead.
I think what we're getting to is like cyclists need to do way more calf work.
Yeah. Since I've taken your course, I've been doing calf raises every day.
Great. Like even not only in the gym, but I'd be curious, like, okay, let's make a fun game. What wattage can you maintain for 3 minutes staying plantar flex the whole time?
Oh, so, okay, I just did this drill with a client yesterday.
Oh, awesome.
Because people come in and they have no clue. Like, okay, proprioceptively, evolutionary biology, it always comes down to this, right? Okay, what are we designed to do? Run and walk. So when we're running and walking, when we're running from a tiger or walking after a herd of deer that sprinted away from us because we suck at sprinting, what are the two most basic goals we have to have? One, we have to have good proprioceptive awareness of the ground so that we don't trip and fall and break a femur or pelvis when we're walking over the mountains or through the fields.
The homunculus is the part of the brain. The real estate I'm trying to put it in simple terms, like the part of your brain that controls each part of your body. So like face, hands, and feet are some of the biggest parts.
But there's increased awareness there.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. And so the homunculus is a drawing that exaggerates that by drawing those anatomical features that have increased nervous system reactivity or information bigger. So it's this funny looking human.
Yeah.
I did a drawing of it a long time ago on a different pod. And then the other one is eyes.
Yep.
Right. Vestibular and ocular systems have to be oriented to the horizon so we can track the deer and we can look at their footsteps and see where they went and not fall off a cliff, and also look for prey, predators.
It's hard to have that awareness on Zambonied surfaces like sidewalks and roads. And
good adjective.
Thanks.
So, wait, where was I with that proprioceptive? I was going somewhere with this.
Feet.
Yeah. Shit.
I mean, I'll try to finish your sentence. Like,
Okay.
the shoes that cyclists are in seem to be numbing a lot of their awareness and where stiffness can be created. And it's just like they're pushing into a wet rag.
That was it. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly it. So people come in and I film them and I show them what they look like. And they're like, oh, wow, I'm really pointing my toes. Or, oh, my feet are completely flat. They have no idea. Because there's no, like, my hashtag is I film butts for a living. Like, people don't know what their hips are doing on a bike because we have no real need to orient our pelvis relative to our rib cage. In nature, when we're walking and running over uneven ground, in theory, that should be a somewhat self-corrective exercise.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that it could be, if you're running in barefoot sandals, to some degree, especially if you grew up.
In theory, it should.
Yeah.
But
we ruin it with too many things, right?
No. Like, even there's people that do movement workshops out in nature, and all their trainings out in nature, like parkour on trees. Yeah. I put this in the course. And,
disastrous movement mechanics sometimes.
It's just that without very specific intervention, the brain will repeat the movement pattern that has worked in the past. And so nature can be self-corrective, but not always.
Yeah.
You know, I forgive my, I'm always saying, like, it depends, but I find that this level of specificity gives you better tools to make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I film people. So, okay, this is where we were going with it, is I give them a drill and I call it Frankenstein feet or Cinderella ballet slippers.
Great.
So I have them ride extreme plantar flexion, toes pointed down, and we do it for 30 seconds. And I'm cueing them to feel the things, feel what's happening at their knees, what's happening at their hips, what the sensations are in their toes. And then I have them go to, and I give that a number 10. Then I have them drop to Frankenstein feet, which is dorsiflexion, heels down to a ridiculous degree. And usually you feel your hips moving more and your knees are kind of close to locking out, or maybe locking out depending on where their saddle is and some other variables. And we just have them ride there. And then I ask them, then I give that a 0. And most of the time, then the goal is to have them ride at about a 3, so that when they're initiating the power phase, they are engaging actively the ankle and driving through with some horizontal vector or some horizontal force, and then converts into vertical force. And then at the bottom, they're polishing it off and then they let it go. I never recommend that people pull up on the backside of the stroke during seated cycling, because all you're going to do is hyperfacilitate a psoas or double load the hamstrings. And this is incorrect. So we don't need to use a postural muscle physically. And so I that's my basic MO on, and I just did this with a rider yesterday and showed her the video, and she was like, before the drill, and she was like, wow. And so I asked people to do this during warm up, like, orient your ankles, figure out where your ankles are in space, wake them up. Right. And this is after you've done your 30 heel raises as warm up before you get on the bike. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is some low hanging fruit for people.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't get any attention.
Yeah.
But it's where all the force has to go through.
Yeah. Have to convey the force, running uphill, running upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without your heel hitting the ground.
Yeah. I'm pretty disappointed because we didn't really quote very many movies.
Right. And now I'm like so much in this mode that I can't even think of a movie to quote.
Have you seen the two new Dune movies?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're so good.
Did you watch you watch the original, the David Lynch one?
No, I still haven't seen that one.
Oh my God.
I think I'm fairly late to the Dune game. I'd like to say, I read the book first.
Yeah. Good for you.
I think I feel like I should get points for that.
You do. Yeah.
I've been wanting to read the second and third one just to get to the fourth, but the second one is so dry.
They get weirder after that.
Yeah. But I hear number 4 is the best one.
I haven't read that one, to be honest. So interesting. Yeah. I mean, the movies are just
spectacular,
astounding. Yeah. They're what films should be. Yeah. And they make everything else look like a piece of shit.
I was going to close this podcast off with "May thy knife chip and shatter."
Very good.
Such a good line.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife and I watch those movies like after a really shitty day or busy day, just to like calm our nervous systems.
They're so beautiful.
Yeah. So well filmed. So the David Lynch is like it's this extreme polarization of complete and utter flaming shit and beautiful seeds that are planted. I watched it again as an adult and was like, I realized how much of this movie actually infiltrated my psyche as a young kid.
Interesting.
Like there's some really amazing scenes in it. And then there's some that are like, what the fuck is happening? This is terrible.
This is
definitely
a random tidbit, but I like watching this YouTube series called VFX Artists React. And the reason why I like watching it is because their job is to make an audience believe that something is real when it's not. And so they're some of the only people that see human movement the way that I do.
Yeah.
Or even teach me new stuff that they're like nuances that they have to animate.
Okay.
So that a viewer's subconscious doesn't get triggered by their bad animation.
Yeah. Right. So you can be part of the story. The technology should tell the story without being a distraction in theory, right?
Yeah. And what this is coming to is like, I remember watching one with the older Dune movie, and it's also like a cinematic masterpiece in some ways.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. I'll have to note that in YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah. It's by Corridor Crew.
Okay.
The channel.
Corridor?
Corridor? Like a hallway?
Like a hallway. Okay. Got it.
Corridor Crew.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Awesome conversation. A long one. We'll definitely break this into 2 parts.
Cool.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah. If anybody wants to know more, my Instagram is just at Austin Einhorn.
That's AUSTIN.
EINHORN.
Yep.
I assume it's spelled
phonetic.
Somewhere on.
Yeah.
Somewhere. And then if you are interested in the courses, theevolvedcoach.com. We'll tell you everything you need to know.
You've got different tiers, though. You've got basically the more you pay, the more engagement you get with you, and the more deep you can go.
Yep.
So it's I would say there are courses that if you're an athlete and you've got stuff that you just can't figure out, there's gold in there for you. If you're a PT trainer, coach, and you want to help your athletes, also there's a lot of nuggets in there, like we've talked about today.
It's not just help your athletes; you solve common problems a lot faster, a lot better.
Yeah.
Like. You'd be the best coach in your city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. And tell us how often. So we did a 3-day course this spring. That was in March of 25. And you're going to do another one in the fall?
Probably. The in-person one isn't scheduled yet.
Okay.
The online one is 8 weeks. We go all the way down to the bottom of the rabbit hole, almost in the 8-week course.
Okay.
There's 3 of those a year. So there's 2 more this year. I don't know if I'll do 1 or 2 more in-person courses this year. But if you just want to taste test, there is an online community where there's a lot of really cool discussions, a lot of, much more in-depth AMAs. Some coaches and clinicians use it as like, hey, I just want a team to help me problem solve some cases. And they upload videos, and me and some of my best students help answer those questions.
Yeah, that's the level I'm at right now. So that's where I saw that standards of strength and some other stuff. Cool. Yeah. No, it's helping me get my head wrapped around it. I mean, as someone who's been a cycling coach and a bike fitter for years, like I'm obviously kind of more lower body focused, with the awareness that upper body, of course, is, connected to your lower body. And when we drive a bike with real force, we have to use everything, right? But that said, my understanding of the shoulder and elbow and hands is a bit behind my lower limb knowledge, so it's great to touch that up and see other people in the way they think. And
I'll have to share with you some of the movements I've done with some of the cyclists. I think you'd like them.
Yeah, cool. Right on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Attention, well dippers. Did you know that I offer a unique service at my studio in Boulder, Colorado? An integrative fitting is the culmination of my experience and understanding that helps an athlete have a deeper insight into their relationship to cycling and movement. This is understood in the context of how the dream, goal, or objective aligns the client's choices and habits. The psyche, the environment, and drive will all influence the current expression of athletic ability. As we understand these factors, we can shape and direct athletic potential. What this means in a practical sense is that we spend about 6 hours working together, including a short or outdoor ride. I will film you on and off the bike, and we will discuss an extensive intake questionnaire. You will leave the fitting with a unique perspective on your function and with actionable pathways to improve your performance. This service was created specifically to help cyclists who have been through various fitting sessions and have had unsuccessful or unsatisfactory results. We dig deeper to find more meaningful outcomes. If you are interested in knowing more about an integrative fitting, please visit my website, colbypierce.com, where you can book an appointment. Epilogue. I want to share a few brief thoughts about the inception of cycling and alignment. The purpose of this podcast is for me to get 3.5 decades of hard-fought lessons out of my skull. Some of them through my own research and reading. Some of them I've been taught through mentors and colleagues, other riders, other racers. A lot of it, a massive amount of it, was simply trial and error through my own stubborn methods. And that has amassed a certain amount of experience and knowledge, understanding. And while I think I'm reasonably smart and I know quite a bit of stuff, I want to make it clear that the opinions that I share on this podcast are belief systems built on what I've experienced to this point. And that some of those opinions are pretty strong, but they are also loosely held. That is to say that if I learn more about a topic and have a greater level of clarity or understanding, then my old belief systems will be abandoned and I will now operate under that newfound knowledge. So I'm not here to tell people all the things that I know. I'm here to explain what I've learned to this point. And there's a big difference. Also, that is the intent when I discuss things on the pod with guests, is to learn from them and have a discourse. Because if we can't have a discourse as adults, then we've lost one of the basic tenets of modern society. Even if we disagree, we ought to be able to, in most cases, shake hands and walk away. Because after all, this is sport we're talking about, and while sport is training for life, it's nothing to get too upset over. The purpose of the podcast is to help me help other people, and specifically to help them actualize their highest potential by illuminating a path that enables alignment with their truth, their intent, and their coherence. That's really the end goal. So I'm grateful for your listening. My intent is also not, to be clear, to gain an audience or become popular or gain social status in any way. I don't care about that stuff. That said, if you feel an episode that you have heard will help someone you know, please share it with them. That helps us reach the end goal, which is to help more people. Thank you for listening. I'm grateful for your time and attention. Blessings.